from the ancient Moabites, Canaanites, etc. In modern terms, they would be referred to as Moors. And so there be more clarity on the comprehension of political activities coming from Rome and the Bishopric of Rome through their unum sanctum policies and their doctrine of discovery policies that are exercised in these days that has pretty much destroyed most of the governments on the world, on the planet, etc. So having a cognizance of that would give you a cognizance of some of the political, economic problems that are facing humanity today, etc. And so we'll share some of that with you, and we'll talk a little bit about it. One of the subjects is death and taxes, and people, for lack of knowledge, have been trained from childhood that the only thing that is permanent or real, etc., or undeniable at Midgard or on planet Earth is death and taxes. So we're going to go into that so that people will have a clear comprehension that it has nothing to do with divinity. It has everything to do with demonology, etc. And in fact, it does. So we're going to present to you, and most of you who come and share with us at the House of Awakening Minds, you know that we always encourage you to take notes so that you can do cross-reference for yourselves and you can research for yourselves, etc. And logically, you'll find some of these general factors. There's nothing that we haven't really told you before, but because of the political atmosphere and agendas that are taking place in these current days contemporarily, this is certainly relevant for the knowledge of people. And particularly, again, for those who have been attacked by members of the Roman Curia, and these are heads of the different agencies that some of which you are familiar with, that you may have assumed to be legitimate governmental platforms when in fact they never were and are indeed not. And for those of you who, through different writs or responses to the de facto claims of debt waged against yourselves in what you call linguistic capital or connotative linguistics, and myself and Brother Lord Maddox Eel we were having a conversation actually earlier, and we were sharing some of the information just in general conversation, particularly for the things that are taking place today. So I want to give a shout out to him too for his great research, and because a lot of people know this stuff truthfully, but what you find is many people they prefer to be liked, and so they will not get into what you will call what they refer to as controversial truths that really help humanity. They'll dance around these issues, etc. And for one, he is one who that I find credible for having the courage to challenge truths and to speak truth on behalf of humanity and in behalf of our people here, particularly in the Western Hemisphere of the Maghreb, under hybrid European occupation known as U.S. democracy occupation, etc. And he's one who, you know, does research also and is willing to speak the truth. So we're just going to share some of the stuff with you so that the misconception that death and taxes are your fate, that is a false concept, that is a fraudulent concept, that is a de facto concept, that it is a colored concept, that is a prima facie concept, Simulacrum, distinguished from that which is real concept. However, it has been living, it has taken life among our people to their detriment and to their injury. So, it just in general, some of these things must be known so that there's a counter or rebuttal, intelligent rebuttal by living people or living men and women who have been listed as stock under the U.S. corporate government person paradigm, etc., and actually bonds put on them, whether you're talking about the marriage certificates, the birth certificates, etc., which are bonds, and the CUSIP numbers, which are used for the routing of the different districts of the Roman Curia operations of the Federal Reserve through the IRS, particularly operating on our land and different humanity. They still think that these people are, just lightly corrupt relative to parties, political parties, political ideologies, etc., and still haven't accepted the reality that, in fact, the demon breed of hybrids have actually been operating in government actually for the last 1,000 years, to be honest with you. And then you are aware that many of the people are not aware that there's more than one earth, and that earth simply means inhabited place. So earth means inhabited place. It does not mean this particular inhabited place that we call earth. This particular earth is called Midgard. Midgard, write that down and don't forget it, because as things begin to open up and more is revealed to the people in general, the conversations will change, because your concepts will change, because your information base will change, because much that has been suppressed for the last 1,000 years or so will be opened up. And this is why, and this is how people in some ways will be able to handle better in their comprehension and their ability to adjust and kind of modify themselves under these pressures that are being put on them by knowing what's real and what has been fake. And so very often people hear us say, de facto, de jure, prima facie, simulacrum, etc. And because we know that a lot of people who, come and share with us at the House of Reawakening Minds don't have an extensive library, because we have been trained to, get rid of our books, particularly after the hybrids enforced the unum sanctum operations with the, indexus librorum prohibitorum and indexus librorum expurgatorius, that the people have been told were the great Christian book burnings, not knowing that these are actually the demon hybrids among us who actually been governing, and they have infiltrated every phase of life for the most part. And all of your major institutions that the people have learned to trust and put their time, their service, their efforts into to make life better, they have not known, and it's hard for people to accept that these institutions are contaminated with the hybrid demon breed. And over the years, they've also recognized that every once in a while, when we're talking about the hegemony of the hybrid Europeans, we'd often just say Europeans, and in these last 7 or 8 years, we've been reminding the people, we're making reference to the hybrid Europeans, and that's not to say all the hybrid Europeans are actually operating on the demonic level. However, it must be understood that in general, and this is not limited to them. However, in general, those who have been operating on the demonic level have pretty much gripped themselves or rooted themselves within the hybrid dramatic tribes, as opposed to less so to the Asiatic African tribes, etc. And so one of the things that we want to remind the people of is we have to start shedding some of the concepts that we have that we've been taught by the dark priesthood via the dogma platforms that have been presented as religion. And so, and this is a reminder to put you in context with what we're dealing with in these days, so that the people can better handle the attacks that are being made on them, both open and covert. And so we're going to read hell because we already know, when we talked this earlier, when you were making the poster, Dr. Naila, and I was saying to you, I didn't want the fire as a background because the people have been pretty much spooked by that general image when they talk about hell. And the reality is, because of the anthropomorphic instructions that have been promoted upon humanity for the last, hundreds of years, it's kind of difficult for them to recognize that the people who they trusted to redeem them from these negative jinn, din, shaitan, Satan concept, negative beings, dark spirits, etc. Not knowing that those were pretty much the houses of these beings. And of course, it's difficult to get people to look at things realistically because out of fear, miscomprehension, people sometimes are in denial that the platforms and their conditions are a reflection of failure relative to their concepts, as opposed to the successes that we have been promoting among ourselves in the name of religion. And I always say in the name of religion, because the truth of the matter is, and this is not new, that the masses in general have not been really taught the truth about religion. And so religion in many ways gets a bad name because it has been contaminated by the dark priesthood. And it must be understood that the dark priesthood have always taken anything that is positive and turned it negative. As an example, for instance, when they want to deceive someone or to bring someone in under a psychic attack, as an example, or they want to approach them politically and produce some destructive ends, they will always bring or present what you would call a pretty face, and whether it's political, physical, etc., or promise of good and actually do the opposite. Their major operations are based on projection, and that is to present one thing and do the opposite, and at the same time perfect the art of producing that opposition and then again projecting it on someone else. Meaning that, as an example, on a more simplistic form or term, say break the window of your neighbor's house and then point to the neighbor down the street, or take or steal something from the neighbor down the street, as an example, some item, then attack someone else and leave the evidence of the item that belongs to another, and then be the mediator between the two while plotting to destroy both sides. And this has been a consistent pattern of the priesthood. And this is again why you will see constantly in dogma systems, even while the priesthood had been raping the people at large, they keep them psychologically fighting between gods and devils without explanations about the origins of those gods and devils. They just use those words loosely. And by the people not knowing the history and the development of the dark priesthood of Rome, etc., they don't suspect them. They look to them for guidance. So we want to talk about, number one, how they've always been using the guilt trip of going to hell if you don't go along with the programs that the priesthood present to you. And this is where the connotative linguistic comes in, because they have presented one thing about hell when hell is actually another. So let's everyone take a pen and paper, which you usually do when you come here with us at the House of Reawakening Minds, and write down hell, Hell. And so we're going to go into ancient jurisprudence, and it's still modern jurisprudence, um, and show you what it really means. On page 857 of Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary, Ancient and Modern Jurisprudence. Hell. Hell is the name formerly given to a place under the executor chamber where the king's debtors were confined. Now, when you go, and for those of you who are scholars, you'll find that also in the Old Rich Dictionary and other older dictionaries of jurisprudence, law, etc. And yet, the priesthood would present hell as a place of fire, under the ground, etc. And while allegorically, in some ways, that had some truth to it, it's not true in the sense that the people have been taught, because it's really dealing with the fact that beneath the chambers of the executors, the king's chambers, etc., they housed people or put people in the ground in dungeons when they did not pay tithing to the priesthood and the lords, etc., who were feudal lords and abusing the people. This was a punishment for them, not unlike the private prisons all across North America that they've been telling the people are actually government prisons, when actually they're the private prisons of actually the members of the Circle Church and Chancery, which you've been told were judges and magistrates, and the attorneys and lawyers that you've been thinking were in place to defend the treaty rights and the constitution rights of the people, when actually they are and have been and are members of the Roman Curia and operatives of hell. And what they do is operate from this perspective. The persons who are claiming to be magistrates and judges have vestment in private prisoner of war camps that they've been calling public prisons, and having the public pay for the buildings of them, but yet they are actually profit centers for human trafficking, including that gives them a locked in and how do you say a body of people to experiment on with biological warfare, biological drugs, vaccines, and other poisons, etc., and also to use for promoting their genocide modification programs, etc., and then make the people pay for it, and also put liens on the estates of the people who go through the system. And the people in general have no idea that these are actually private for-profit human trafficking platforms. And that is your modern version of hell, although they still have hell, but it's more expanded in so much as many of you have heard of the military underground facilities that have been operating all across the world, and with many of their operative command centers being at North America under the jurisdiction of the operatives or the Roman Curia members known as the U.S. Congress, etc. That is also the executor's chambers. But it's an expanded operation in so much as it deals with humans, not just because they haven't paid taxes or homage to the priesthood, i.e., or the popes of Rome, or the members of the Roman Curia. And most of you would know the members of the Roman Curia loosely as maybe the Bilderbergers, the Illuminati, Grand Dragons of the Ku Klux Klan, as an example, like Senator Byrd, who's one of his most favorite ghouls was known as Joe Biden, who is now operative praetor. So praetor, Preator, is the actual position of the people who have been operating that you've been calling president. They're really praetors. So these are some of the reality of political dynamics and paradigms that the people are actually dealing with, and they are not aware of it. And while much of the information and realities have been suppressed from the masses, what we try to do here at the House of Reawakening Minds is to present some things without being overburdening with burdening with the people, so that they can start taking responsibility and look at things as in a more real sense, because it's the state of mind that the people have that has much to do with the cures that we must bring ourselves. And this is back to it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to recognize that we have to start taking responsibility for our lives and stop looking for, the rescues of the messiahs in the concepts that they have been telling you, because that was also one of the skilled arts of the dark priesthood, to keep the people passive while they were being destroyed and raped, etc. And they've been quite successful at it. So we can't say that they haven't been successful at it, because they absolutely have. However, because things have are more in the open now, meaning that the dark priesthood, they're not using a lot of what you call structured programs as they used to do, to cover up their projections and misrepresentations and connotative linguistics. They're just bluntly doing things to the people. This is also why, I think it was around maybe 16 or 17 years ago, we started sharing with you the evidence of the corporate papers for the United States Corporation, because we know that a lot of people that we've been telling for years that the United States was actually a trading company and not a country. And so we showed the people and shared with you their actual corporate papers, verified copies of their actual corporate papers, so that you could recognize that it's not a country, they are a private corporation. And the fact that they've been bankrupted and they keep producing new shells has been because the Congress for the corporation, as presumed to be by the people, was actually and always has been since 1861, and in fact, kind of like really before that. But as far as documented admission, board of trustees, and board of directors for that private corporation of operations of human trafficking, etc. And these are some of the things that have been going on, particularly since occupation of the North. When people make reference to the 1492 era, one of the things that the hybrids have been doing, aside from burning books, was taking much and many of the prime or prize literature and scientific disciplines of the ancient world and actually housing them. And this has much to do with many of the secret societies that they have established, that many of you are familiar with. Because a lot of the advanced disciplines that they may learn and take death oaths of not revealing to the public in general is actually ancient Asiatic African science and culture from the ancient Sabian Moors, and that's the truth. And to cover up the whole dynamics of the ancient Sabian Moors, or they'll talk about Sabbath, which we've done that many times over and over again to kind of clear the people's mind up. They covered up with the word Jew because they stole the jewels of our wealth. They stole the jewels or the pinnacle light or the crystal facets of our knowledge, etc. And so today, people are under the impression, as an example, when they're looking at different crafts, Vermana and stuff like that, that they've been seeing more lately than they did before in the skies, particularly if you look in the northwestern areas, um, and think that they'll call them UFOs and things like that, not knowing that these were kind of like lightweight, back engineered replicas of stuff that we've had for thousands of years, including technology. As an example, so you see this little image here of this little image of an elephant as an example. Packaged energy like this actually ran territories. As far as, like, say, for instance, if you're looking from a jurisdictional perspective of, say, Shakamoxon area, Shekyabi area, say Pennsylvania, Jersey, land of Nod, you call New York, we call that the land of Nod, all the way up to Canaan land, etc. It would be an energy module about this size that actually ran all the energy there, and that is in that whole area and could go further. And that's thousands of years old. It's old stuff. One of the things that is uncomfortable right now, and another reason why we're talking about this, about hell, Midgard, and the executor's chamber, is because it is important for the people, those who are willing, to actually go within themselves and to start activating the old memory of that their mother gave them. You all have it, because everybody kind of knows that the hybrids are trying to kill the people off. So let's just go through the chase and not beat around the bush. They intend to kill you off. That's just the truth. And then claim Midgard, and it might sound outlandish to you, but actually that's the fact. And I think a lot of times we get into conversations about correcting the political platforms, and getting people to respect, people's right of voting and things like that. And we go through those exercises because for learning purposes. But in the reality of it all, we're really past all that, because that paradigm really is one of the control at modification systems of the engineering that was put in place also to maintain and promote docility. And a lot of times when we talk about constructing instruments and writs, etc., over the years to address the hybrids who have been personating as government, it is much of it actually is for your own learning and for our own learning, because we've been so out of the loop of self-government and not knowing that these people are actually invaders, and that this was actually they're talking about as lately about the legitimate republic being captive. Um, and the real deal is they're avoiding telling you that the government was captured far before that. It's sort of like uh, occupiers being betrayed by other occupiers among them, and they're battling over an estate and a political platform that originated not with either of them. And so they're still trying to avoid telling the truth about the history here and the fact that North America is Morocco. And rather than say Casablanca, they'll say White House because it means Casablanca. And that they have a tunnel system that goes across the planet and particularly across the north to the south and even under the water to Cuba and to some of your other islands, etc., actually with what you call intersecting networks. And this is also laid out even from Washington, from the Chrome or the Crown Seat that is known as District of Columbia. And as some of these things, people are looking at some of these things coming out, etc., and looking at them as, devastatingly revealing. I'm not minimizing them, but I'm saying this. We have to go kind of beyond that because the reality of it, all of this is just to smash your face to come into reality, but you're going to have to kind of advance far beyond that. However, some of these mental exercises that we've been dealing with over the years here have been necessarily kind of like to get your brain working, to be honest with you, with no intention of stagnating you, but also knowing that every time we speak, there's going to be counter moves, so we're careful of what we say because we know that they're counter moves.
Before you go any further, there are a couple of questions that you might want to address. There were two questions that asked about who were the hybrids, and if there was only one race, then who did they mix with? Aliens, reptilians?
All right. Now, see, now when you know that this is Midgard, and we've been telling you over the years, really, that Earth means inhabited place. And while we've been saying Midgard, I know it's been passing a lot of people's ears. We've told them, but we're careful about how much we say because we already know that because there's battles that are going on, that much information will be blocked and they'll get none if it's determined by the priesthood. So we try to expose or speak of some things in a manner that it can get people to start using their intelligence, because we also know that humanity also has what you will call trigger points within them in their cell memory, that if you talk along certain lines that they will wake up in some areas, and many of them will know and start talking among themselves, etc., which is really what we've been trying to seek to do, because we also know you never say too much, but if you're just blunt and open and honest, not only will most people not believe you, those who have been holding humanity to forced servitude will attack them and you too and shut down so that the others can't get. And then plus they have a practice of hurting people around you in order to block. And has been much of the reason why they've been ruling so long. However, the interesting thing that we talked about before, and that we'll mention again, and we've said it, and I know that some of you who know better recognize when it was said to you, when we reminded people that the Earth has already gone through the Futon belt and that there's a different energy here. So you would add to that what you know that was going unspoken, and understand that a lot of the methodologies used by the dark priesthood to pull the people into the pit of ignorance wouldn't work no matter what they did. However, because the people are in a state of kind of like a coma state based on that they've been groomed under dogma systems for so many generations that their lack of awareness is kind of both a state of self-defense and denial combined, and sometimes people aren't willing to look at themselves or to really admit their own hypocrisy out of fear, guilt, superstition, people who are around them, imagery, uh, threats for their job. However, we're at a place now that because the platforms that were constructed under the energy of the Piscean star system constellation, it can't operate cleanly under the Aquarian lights. These are things, not things that you don't know. These are things that you, for the most part, most of you already know.
Are you saying that you cannot
Meaning,
disclose who what the hybriding process? What do you mean when you talk about the hybrids? Because that's basically what the question is.
For those of you, I'll give you a source to keep it simple. This is for the average person that's reading or that's sharing with us tonight. Go to your Oxford dictionaries pre 1960 and look up these three things: Anthropopithecus, troglodyte nigger, and look up hybrid and put them all together, put the definitions all together, and go into the etymology, which you will see within the context of the linear entries. And in your more modern dictionaries, it will not be there. It will be in your older dictionaries. This is again part of the expurgatorious operations, or what the people refer to as book burnings. So when they talk about the burning, they think hell's burning, fire, stuff like that. But it's really a general operation at Midgard. So, and you will find roughly around entry 8. And so what they would do, they would take the denotation meanings and lower them in the sequence of the linear entries of definitions and insert the connotative linguistics first. However, at about 0.8.
No, it was Anthropopithecus.
I
got it. And then what was the next one?
Troglodyte nigger.
Okay.
And hybrid. Okay. And take all the definitions, take all the denotative definitions, harmonic with its etymology, which you'll see structured in there, and put them together, and you will see very clearly that the hybrid Europeans who refer him to himself as an Englishman or Angloman will say, we Englishmen at best are but heterogeneous hybrids. We Englishmen at best are but heterogeneous hybrids. Now, one of the scientific terms given to the heterogeneous hybrid would be Paleolithic man, sometimes referred to as modern man, sometimes referred to by the German tribe naturalists like Mendelin. You can talk about Blumenbach, Linnaeus, etc. And they'll talk about the looking for the framework or the skeletons of the morphing evolutionary development of hominidae, becoming man out of the Pongidae species, etc., or what they say, the monkey, etc., Darwin, etc., and people like him. And so people would think that the man evolved from the Pongidae Anthropopithecus, and they would be absent logically of those scientific experiments also took place at the plateaus in the Yucatan, not limited to there, dealing with hybriding, also dealing with plant life, not just human plant life. One of the ways that the hybrids in contemporary times would talk about the hybriding. They made a movie called, and look for this movie because it tells you a lot more than you would think that it would tell you. Because you look at it as fictional, but while the movie is fictional, it's telling you a lot of truths. Dr. Moreau's Island. Dr. Moreau's Island. Moreau means more in Germanic linguistic French, coming from Central Sudan and Nubia, which you would call Germanic, coming from Sanskrit. So when people look at Iberia and they look at German, the language, they think it's the hybrids language, when actually it comes from among the Picts and the Dubs, etc., from ancient Hikupta. These are some of your Naga tribes, Banti, etc. So understand that the hybrid knows that they're hybrid. Does not mean that hybrids are bad in the sense that, people keep saying, they keep looking at some of the issues among humanity and they start, saying these people are good and these people are bad type things. No, don't look at it that way. Look at it realistically for what it is. The hybrid Europeans, among the hybrid Europeans, many of them have maintained and cultivated their animalistic form, which is also why over the centuries, why many nations have always haven't been having a problem with some of the hybrids, because of some of them have still continued to display a very beastly nature of bloodletting, blood sucking, killing humans, doing cannibalism, etc., which continues to this day. And these are some of the problems that are actually plaguing us, that are coming out, that a lot of people, when they're looking at it as something kind of new or really strange. And we're talking about some of this stuff because it's not new and it's not strange. It's strange. It's strange to the human. And then many of us kind of being uncomfortable because of the hybrids, mistreating our people, and they hide it under the subcategory of connotative linguistics known as the Linnaeus and the Blumenbach operations of taxidermy, and they'll call it racism and prejudice, etc., which is a cover-up for a lot of the real truth about humanity and our condition. So when you're looking at what many of our Banti tribes here at North America would refer to as the paleface, they were talking about the paleolith or the heterogeneous hybrid. And of course, you already know, we don't have to tell you that in these last couple hundred years, we've been having extreme problems with the hybrids. But we need to be honest, and we need to start looking at things as they really are and having some comprehension of really what's been going on, so that whatever decisions we make, whatever administrative operations we develop among ourselves, in relationship to others, etc., are based more on truths than on emotional responses and dogmatic, non-linear, not grounded, and not truthful concepts that have been taught under the anthropomorphic structures, some of which we ourselves have structured for teaching. Because the customs of Africa have been to create metaphors or to tell stories in metaphor, to transfer information, etc., stuff like that, and to preserve. In another way, some of the methodologies that we use for maintaining customs and traditions and knowledge has been what you call mythology. And by some of these, what they would refer to, that is common when the Moors ruled, was known as the seven liberal arts, rhetoric, when you're talking about grammar, etc., these disciplines aren't taught now in school in the way they were, years ago. And so a lot of points of reference that people would use as a tool, etymologically, epistemology, etc., orthology, things that were common, just simply common parts of erudition that you would call education today, not being availed to the people. Sometimes when you go into some of these things, it appears to go past the people when it actually shouldn't, because it's actually elementary stuff. However, the hybrid European himself will tell you he's a hybrid. And this is again why they have problems with the sun